Namaste, Dandavat Pranam. By the instruction and grace of our spiritual master, Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa, Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj, we are here reading Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Canto 4, The Creation of the Fourth Order, Chapter 4, Text 15. Yat Padha Padmam Mahatam Manolibir Nishevitam Brahma Rasavartibihi Lokshayad Varshati Chashishorihintas Tasmai Pavandruyati Vishvabandave. You are envious of Lord Shiva, who is the friend of all living entities within the three worlds. For the common man, he fulfills all desires, and because of their engagement in thinking of his lotus feet, he also blesses higher personalities who are seeking after Brahmanda, transcendental bliss. Purport. Ordinarily, there are two classes of men. One class, who are grossly materialistic, want material prosperity, and their desires are fulfilled if they worship Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva, being very quickly satisfied, satisfies the material desires of the common man very quickly. Therefore, it is seen that ordinary men are very much apt to worship him. Next, those who are disgusted or frustrated with the materialistic way of life worship Lord Shiva to attain salvation, which entails freedom from material identification. One who understands that he is not the material body, but his spirit soul, is liberated from ignorance. Lord Shiva is also offering that facility. People generally practice religion for economic development, to get some money, for by getting money they can satisfy their senses. But when they are frustrated, they want spiritual Brahmanda, or merging into the Supreme. These four principles of material life, religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation, exist. And Lord Shiva is the friend of both the ordinary man and the man who is above both the ordinary and the elevated men in this world. Lord Shiva is the friend of both the ordinary man and the man who is elevated in spiritual knowledge. Thus, it was not good for Daksha to create enmity towards him. Even Vaishnavas, who are above both the ordinary and the elevated men in this world, also worship Lord Shiva as the greatest Vaishnava. Thus, he is the friend of everyone, the common men, the elevated men, and the devotees of the Lord. So no one should disrespect or create enmity towards Lord Shiva. Dandavat Pranamananda Krishna Prabhu.
Dandavat.
Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat Madev.
Dandavat.
Kim va shivakyam ashibham na vidustvad anye brahmadhyastam avakirya jatasmashane tanmalya basmanrika palya basat pishchar ye mordhabir dadhati tachcharnava vrishtam. Do you think that great, more respectable personalities than you, such as Lord Brahma, do not know this inauspicious person who goes under the name of Lord Shiva? He associates with the demons in the crematorium. His locks of hair are scattered all over his body, and he is garlanded with human skulls and smeared with ashes from the crematorium. But in spite of all these inauspicious qualities, great personalities like Brahma honor him by accepting the flowers offered to his lotus feet and placing them with great respect on their heads. Purport. It is useless to condemn a great personality like Lord Shiva, and this is being stated by his wife, Satī, to establish the supremacy of her husband. First, she said, "You call Lord Shiva inauspicious because he associates with demons in crematoriums, covers his body with the ashes of the dead, and garlands himself with the skulls of human beings. You have shown so many defects, but you do not know that his position is always transcendental. Although he appears inauspicious, why do personalities like Brahma respect the dust of his lotus feet and place it on their heads with great respect? Those very garlands which are condemned by you. Since Satī was the chaste woman and the wife of Lord Shiva, it was her duty to establish the elevated position of Lord Shiva, not only by sentiment, but by facts. Lord Shiva is not an ordinary living entity. This is the conclusion of Vedic scripture. He is neither on the level of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, nor on the level of the ordinary living entities. Brahma is in almost all cases an ordinary living entity. Sometimes when there is no ordinary living entity available, the post of Brahma is occupied by an expansion of the Lord Vishnu, but generally his post is occupied by a greatly pious living entity within this universe. Thus, Lord Shiva's position is constitutionally higher than that of Lord Brahma, although Lord Shiva appeared as the son of Brahma. Here it is mentioned that even personalities like Brahma accept the so-called inauspicious flowers and the dust of the lotus feet of Lord Shiva. Great sages like Marichi, Atri, Brigu, and the others among the 9 great sages who are descendants of Brahma also respect Lord Shiva in such a way because they all know that Lord Shiva is not an ordinary living entity. In many Puranas, it is sometimes asserted that a demigod is elevated to such a high position that he is almost on an equal level with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the conclusion that Lord Vishnu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead is confirmed in every scripture. Lord Shiva is described in Brahma Samhita to be like the curd or yogurt. Curd is not different from milk, since milk is transformed into curd. In one sense, curd is also milk. Similarly, Lord Shiva is in one sense the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but in another sense, he is not. Just as curd is milk, although we have to distinguish between the two. These descriptions are in the Vedic literature. Whenever we find that a demigod occupies a position apparently more elevated than that of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it is just to draw the devotee's attention to that particular demigod. It is also stated in Bhagavad Gita 9.25 that if one wants to worship a particular demigod, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is sitting in everyone's heart, gives one greater and greater attachment for that demigod so that one may be elevated to the demigod's abode. Yanti Devha Vrata Devan. By worshiping demigods, one can elevate himself to the abodes of the demigods. Similarly, by worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can be elevated to the spiritual kingdom. This is stated in different places in Vedic literature. Here, Lord Shiva is praised by Satī, partially due to her personal respect for Lord Shiva, since he is her husband, and partially due to his exalted position, which exceeds that of ordinary living entities, even Lord Brahma. The position of Lord Shiva is accepted by Lord Brahma, so Daksha, Satī's father, should also recognize him. That was the point of Satī's statement. She did not actually come to her father's house to participate in the function, although before coming, she pleaded with her husband that she wanted to see her sisters and her mother. That was a plea only, for actually at heart she maintained the idea that she would convince her father, Daksha, that it was useless to continue being envious of Lord Shiva. That was her main purpose. When she was unable to convince her father, she gave up the body he had given her, as will be seen in the following verses. Text 17. Karno pidhaya nirayad yad akalpa ishe dharma vitaryaspranibir ribhir asyamane chindyat prasaya rushitam asatim prabhuschej jibham vasuna pitato vishrijat dharma. Satī continued, if one hears an irresponsible person blaspheme the master and controller of religion, one should block his ears and go away, if unable to punish him. But if one is able to kill, then one should by force cut out the blasphemer's tongue and kill the offender, and after that one should give up his own life. Purport. The argument offered by Satī is that a person who vilifies a great personality is the lowest of all creatures. But by the same argument, Daksha could also defend himself by saying that since he was a Prajapati, the master of many living creatures, and one of the great officers of the great universal affairs, his position was so exalted that Satī should accept his good qualities instead of vilifying him. The answer to that argument is that Satī was not vilifying, but defending. If possible, she should have cut out Daksha's tongue because he blasphemed Lord Shiva. In other words, since Lord Shiva is the protector of religion, a person who vilifies him should be killed at once. And after killing such a person, one should give up one's life. That is the process, but because Daksha happened to be the father of Satī, she decided not to kill him, but to give up her own life in order to compensate for the great sin he had committed by hearing blasphemy of Lord Shiva. The instruction set forth here in Srimad Bhagavatam is that one should not tolerate at any cost the activities of a person who vilifies or blasphemes an authority. If one is a Brahmana, he should not give up his body because by doing so he would be responsible for killing a Brahmana. Therefore, a Brahmana should leave the place or block his ears so that he will not hear the blasphemy. If one happens to be a Kshatriya, he has the power to punish any man. Therefore, a Kshatriya should at once cut out the tongue of the vilifier and kill him. But as far as the Vaishyas and Sudras are concerned, they should immediately give up their bodies. Satī decided to give up her body because she thought herself to be among the Sudras and Vaishyas. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 9.32, Shriho Vaishyas Tata Sudra. Women, laborers, and the mercantile class are on the same level. Thus, since it is recommended that the Vaishyas and Sudras should immediately give up their bodies upon hearing blasphemy of an exalted person like Lord Shiva, she decided to give up her life. Text 18. Atas tavotpanam idam kalevaram nadharayishe siti kantagarhina jagdasya mohadi vishudham andaso Jagupishityadorananam prakshakshate. Therefore, I shall no longer bear this unworthy body, which has been received from you, who have blasphemed Lord Shiva. If someone has taken food which is poisonous, the best treatment is to vomit. Purport. Since Satī was the representation of the external potency of the Lord, it was in her power to vanquish many universes, including many dakshas. But in order to save her husband from the charge that he employed his wife, Satī, to kill Daksha because he could not do so due to his inferior position, she decided to give up her body. Text 19. Navedha vadan anuvartate mati svaeva loke ramato mahamune yatha gatir deva manushayo pratak svaeva dharmena param kshipet stita. It is better to execute one's own occupational duty than to criticize others. Elevated transcendentalists may sometimes forego the rules and regulations of the Vedas since they do not need to follow them, just as the demigods travel in space, whereas ordinary men travel on the surface of the earth. Purport. The behavior of the most elevated transcendentalist and that of the most fallen conditioned soul appears to be the same. The elevated transcendentalist can surpass all the regulations of the Vedas, just as the demigods traveling in space surpass all the jungles and rocks on the surface of the globe. Although a common man who has no such ability to travel in space has to face all those impediments. Although the most dear Lord Shiva appears not to observe all the rules and regulations of the Vedas, he is not affected by such disobedience. But a common man who wants to imitate Lord Shiva is mistaken. A common man must observe all the rules and regulations of the Vedas, which a person who is in the transcendental position does not need to observe. Daksha found fault with Lord Shiva for not observing all the strict rules and regulations of the Vedas, but Satī asserted that he had no need to observe such rules. It is said that for one who is powerful like the sun or fire, there is no consideration of purity or impurity. The sunshine can sterilize an impure place, whereas if someone were to pass such a place, he would be affected. One should try not to imitate Lord Shiva, rather one should strictly follow one's prescribed occupational duties. One should never vilify a great personality like Lord Shiva. Text 20. Karma pravrittam cha nivrittam aprutam Vedhe vivicho bhaya lingam ashritam Varodhi tadyo yago padaika kartari Vayam tata brahmani karmanarchati. In the Vedas, there are directions for two kinds of activities. Activities for those who are attached to material enjoyment and activities for those who are materially detached. In consideration of these two kinds of activities, there are two kinds of people who have different symptoms. If one wants to see two kinds of activities in one person, that is contradictory. But both kinds of activities may be neglected by a person who is transcendentally situated. Purport. The Vedic activities are so designed that the conditioned soul who has come to enjoy the material world may do so under direction, so that at the end he becomes detached from such material enjoyment and is eligible to enter into the transcendental position. The four different social orders, brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyas, gradually train a person to come to the platform of transcendental life. The activities or dress of a grihastha or householder are different from those of a sannyasi, one in the renounced order of life. It is impossible for one person to adopt both orders. A sannyasi cannot act like a householder, nor can a householder act like a sannyasi. But above these two kinds of persons, one who engages in material activities and one who has renounced material activities, there is the person who is transcendental to both. Lord Shiva is in the transcendental position because, as stated before, he is always absorbed in the thought of Lord Vasudeva within himself. Therefore, neither the activities of the grihastha nor of the sannyas in the renounced order can be applicable for him. He is in the Paramahamsa stage, the highest perfectional stage of life. The transcendental position of Lord Shiva is also explained in Bhagavad Gita 2.52 through 53. It is stated there that when one fully engages in transcendental service of the Lord by performing activities without fruitive results, one is elevated to the transcendental position. At that time, he has no obligation to follow the Vedic injunctions or the different rules and regulations of the Vedas. When one is above the directions of the Vedic ritualistic injunctions for attaining different allurements and is fully absorbed in transcendental thought, which means thought of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in devotional service, one is in the position called Buddhi Yoga or Samadhi, ecstasy. For a person who has attained this stage, neither the Vedic activities for realizing material enjoyment nor those for renunciation are applicable. And thus ends our reading for today. We will continue from text 21 on Monday. Did the devotees have any comments or questions? I would make one comment that this is talking about some pastime in the Dwapara Yuga. So when it's saying that if someone hears that a great personality is being blasphemed and the solution is to kill that person, that is not necessarily, that's not correct for the Kali Yuga, right? Kali Yuga, Mahaprabhu showed a different example, right? We know Jagai and Madai, they blasphemed Lord Nityananda. And in that pastime, they showed that in this Kali Yuga, when the souls are so fallen, this is Kali Yuga, the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. So when the souls are so fallen, the Lord is coming knowing that they have no hope by themselves and that their only hope is his mercy, just pure mercy. So Mahaprabhu did not kill Jagai and Madai. Instead, he gave them mercy and they became pure devotees. So the solution is not to kill people in the name of Bhagavatam, right? Hopefully everyone knows that already. But this example was being set in a different yuga when there are different kind of rules of social etiquette because human beings were on a whole different platform. They lived for 1,000 years, right? Everything was very different in Dwapara Yuga. But in this Kali Yuga, Mahaprabhu did not kill the offenders; he gave them mercy, and that's the example that Nitai Gaur have set for Kali Yuga. Jai and Vishnupad Paramahamsa Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj ki Jai.
Jai.
Jai Srila Prabhupada, Srila Guru Maharaj, Srila Gurudev, Srila Acharya Dev, Srila Shanta Maharaj ki Jai.
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 Jai Rupanuga Guru Varga ki Jai.
Jai.
All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the worldwide devotees, Sama Bhaktiveda Vrinda ki Jai.
Jai.
Jai Navadvip Dham ki Jai, Nashangapali Dham ki Jai, Mayapur Dham ki Jai.
Jai.
Jagannath Puri Dham ki Jai, Jagannath
Jai.
Baladev Subhadra Ju ki Jai.
Jai.
Ganga Mai, Yamuna Mai ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham ki Jai, Giri
Jai.
Govardhan, Gupta Govardhan Dham ki Jai, Sham
Jai.
Kundra ki Jai, Tulsi Devi, Bhakti Devi, Vrinda Devi ki Jai.
Jai.
Jai Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai, Jai Harinam Sankirtan Yagya ki Jai, Scientific Sankirtan Yagya ki Jai.
Jai.
Bhaktivedanta Institute ki Jai, Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Institute ki Jai, Sri
Jai.
Chaitanya Saraswat Mat ki Jai.
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 Jai Gaur Premanandi, Hari
Hari Hari Bol.
Hero.
Jai Srimati Uma Devi Dasi ki Jai.
Jai.
Jai Sripad Krishna Prabhu ki Jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
श्रीपाद कृष्ण केशव प्रभु जी की जय.
Jai.
दंडवत
Hare
प्रणाम.
Krishna.
Pranam.
हरे कृष्ण.